my favorite chore here is handing out gold on the midnight special. I have a little surprise here for you. Tonight it is my duty and pleasure to award this to cousin Henry Gross for shining right here on the midnight special. Yeah, Henry.
Everybody's telling me I'm guilty of a felony. Took somebody's melody and put it in my song. I admit I'm lazy and my memory might be hazy, but I'd never be so crazy, 'cause I still know right from wrong. Been high enough to see over the mountain, been high enough to fly above the rain, been down so low, stole pennies from the fountain, been high enough to toss them back again. Every day my honey says my jokes are not so funny. I better earn some money if I wanna get her love. Though I know what I'm missing, I'm a man on a mission, got a strong inner vision. I thank the stars above. Been high enough to see over the mountain, been high enough to fly above the rain, been down so low, stole pennies from the fountain, been high enough to toss them back again. I believe it's down to fate, whatever's meant to be. What I am and what I ain't is good enough for me. Yeah, been high enough to see over the mountain, been high enough to fly above the rain, been down so low, stole pennies from the fountain, been high enough to toss them back again, been high enough to feel I really made it, been high enough to throw it all away. Had a winning hand and I overplayed it, been high enough to see it's all a game, been high enough to know it's just a game. Ooh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to my box. Box, audience, audience, box. Everyone's got one of these. In the attic, under a bed, in a closet somewhere. You know the one when everything gets thrown out? Never gets thrown out. You usually find it when you're busy moving or getting ready to paint a room. You take one look inside and bang, it stops time. You can't stop looking through it. Pictures, letters, postcards, everything that makes you, you. Well, this is my box, and it's always got something to say. In 1975, I did a smoking hot rock and roll album called Plug Me Into Something. It sold nearly 500,000 copies. This is what Stereo Review, a posh magazine in the early 70s, had to say about that album. Henry Gross yowls with the elan of a basset hound in heat. My mom saw that review and sent me this note. Darling son, never give up on your dreams and don't believe everything you read. Besides, even if they're right, remember, William Blake wrote, if a fool persists in his folly, he becomes wise. Well, that had extra special meaning to me because I was born on April Fool's 1951 in Brooklyn, New York, Garden Spot of America, where my mom said, if you could conceive it, you could achieve it. Now,
My mom was a musician, and my dad was a pharmacist. Musician, pharmacist. A match made in heaven to produce a rock and roller. Now, rock and roll in the 50s was about rebellion. And I was rebellious from the downbeat of my youth. And I offer as evidence of this notes sent home to my parents reporting on my behavior, written by my second grade teacher, a certain Mrs. Proctor. Now these are the actual notes from 1956. My mom saved these notes. In fact, my mom saved everything. She would have divorced my father when I was very young. She just didn't have the heart to throw him out. Henry was punished 2 times in class and once at recess. He talks too much. He puts his feet in the aisle to trip people. Mrs. Proctor. As usual, Henry had to be punished again. He talks constantly and tries to be the center of attraction. Mrs. Proctor. Sorry to say, Henry cannot get a good report again. Same story every day. There is no improvement at all. He finds everything amusing. Mrs. Proctor. And finally, Henry was fairly good today. Short day. But distractions from schoolwork were everywhere in the 1950s. We had the cars with the chrome, the bras with the points, and them bums, the Brooklyn Dodgers, the coolest things in the world, and me, the uncoolest kid in all of Brooklyn. Whenever my mom would see this face glistening with disappointment for all the things I'd never achieved, she knew exactly what to say. What you dream is what you get. Anything is possible. Your time is yet to come. Close your eyes and drift away. But don't forget, what you dream is what you get. My mama said, gotta make your bed, pay your debts, have no regrets. Take each day as it comes. Walk, don't run, you get it done. The impossible takes a little bit longer. What don't kill you makes you stronger. The impossible takes a little bit longer. When I go, I'll be gone, moving up and on. The impossible takes a little bit longer. Ain't no river you can't cross, no mountain you can't move, ain't no train you can't get off, no fear that you can't lose. And when I was 6 years old, my mom got me a transistor radio. And that was it. The world stopped. Everything was music after that. I'd listen and sing along with this transistor radio day and night. The dancer to the jailhouse rock, dancer to the jailhouse rock, dancer to the jailhouse rock, dancer to the jailhouse rock. I remember the first time I saw Jailhouse Rock. I'll never forget that scene where Elvis grabs Judy Tyler, kisses her hard on the mouth, and she pulls away and shouts, "How dare you think such cheap tactics would work with me?" And Elvis says, "They ain't tactics, honey. It's just the beast in me." A line I started using everywhere, especially in school, as in, "They ain't tactics, Mrs. Proctor. It's just the beast in me." Now, in reality, I was the furthest thing on the planet Earth from Elvis Presley. I mean, after all, when I was a kid, I was so fat, I could only play Seek. But when I held that radio up to my ear and sang along, I was him. And I could hear the crowd screaming and people shouting, "Look at that boy, he can't hold still, shaking like a leaf on a windy hill. Got himself a script for an all-night pill. Said, look at that boy, he can't hold still. Gold lame like it's painted on his body. Ooh, la, la, drive the little girls wild. Boom, 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 gonna make a ton of money. The kid's got class, he bound to go real far. You can take it to the bank, he's gonna be a rock star. Look at that boy, he can't hold still, shaking like a leaf on a windy hill. Got himself a script for an all-night pill. Said, look at that boy, eyes like a tiger, hips like a snake, a hurricane just about to break. They're going wild about the child. Say, yeah, 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 yeah. Look at that boy, he can't hold still, shaking like a leaf on a windy hill. Got himself a script for an all-night pill. Said, look at that boy, he can't hold still. So whenever I'd feel insecure or out of place, I'd think about Elvis with that big blonde Gibson guitar, and it gave me hope. So years later, when my parents bought my sister a guitar, I swiped it and sat out on the stoop practicing day and night. I'm picking away one day, and who walks by on his way to the church on the corner? Gil Hodges, the all-star first baseman from the Brooklyn Dodgers, who happened to live in the neighborhood. He hears me practicing, and he stops to listen. Got to where he'd stop whenever he passed by and asked me to play him whatever I was working on. He'd listen for a while and say, "Kid, keep at it." And one day, now when the kids in my neighborhood heard me practicing, they'd say, "You stink." And I'd say, "Oh yeah? Well, Gil Hodges thinks I'm pretty good." And they'd say, "Oh yeah? Well, you stink." And it would lead to fights. Anything could lead to fights in my neighborhood. Everybody was always trying to show you how tough they were, especially the Irish kids. They loved to fight. They'd try to provoke me. They'd ask me, they'd say, "Hey kid, you Jewish?" And I'd say, "Not necessarily." But you get beat up enough, you know, it toughens you. Because years later, I remember I was playing O'Hurley's Bar on Flatbush Avenue, and I'm tuning up, getting ready for the second set, when O'Hurley comes up to me and he points to my guitar and he asks me if I can do something Irish. So I hit him with it. But the toughest guys by far in my neighborhood were the Italians. You see, I started playing in bands when I was 13 years old, and the clubs we played were all owned by real wise guys. I mean, when these guys were kids, they played cops and robbers with real cops. And the clubs they owned were so tough, the bouncers used to throw guys in. And on the way out, they'd stab them goodbye. But they didn't bother us too much, because we were in the band. Unless they thought we were trying to get a word in with their dates and the tight sweaters and the painted-on jeans. But who wasn't? We'd see those beautiful girls dancing in front of the bandstand. Only one thought crossed our minds. Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? The wise guy at the bar's waiting for his chance. Got a pistol in his pocket, he thinks he can dance. Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? Mama, who's gonna roll? Who's gonna roll in your arms? Mama, who's gonna roll? Who's gonna roll in your arms? The joker in the corner in a jacket and tie, doing all he can to try to catch your eye. Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? Guy with his wife wishing he was alone. Everybody here wants to take you home. We're all lined up just waiting our turn. Nobody leaving here until we learn. Yeah. Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? You know what I'm thinking, that ain't no crime. All I wanna do is help you make up your mind. Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? Woo-hoo, yeah. Mama, who's gonna rock? Who's gonna rock you tonight? Because I remember many nights, guys named Vincenzo and Angelo and Nunzio and Carmine with fists the size of hams asking me, was you looking at her? And I'd say, not necessarily. And it must have been the right answer because they let me live. And better than that, they booked my band to play weekends at a club they ran called the 19th Hole. Now, this place was typical of the kind of clubs we'd play at that time. It had a small stage, tiny dance floor, some tables, a few booths in the back, and over in the corner behind the cash register was a huge picture of Frank Sinatra. And underneath it, a much, much smaller one of the Pope. Sometimes they liked us so much, they wanted us on a weekday night. Sometimes they loved us so much, they wouldn't let us go. Rocco, the bouncer, you know one of those guys when he stands in the doorway, no light gets in? He'd say, you just keep on playing. I'd say, come on, Rocco, I'm screaming 4 hours. My throat's killing me. He'd say, you just keep on playing. It'll be good for you. I said, come on, Rocco, we got to be in school in the morning. And he'd say, and when they start talking like dolphins, you start rocking. So we rocked on, but the club was empty, except for a couple of booths in the back with a few guys wearing Banlon shirts sitting around talking. Every time we took a break, they'd come up and tell me how much they loved me. They'd say, you're a great singer. We're going to get you tons of work. We got joints all over town. I mean, they really encouraged me. At the end of the night, they gave us each $50. $50? I'm 13 years old. I'm making more money than my dad's making in a day at the drugstore. So when I come home and show him the dough, he'd say, where'd you get this? What are you, robbing gas stations? I don't want this money in my house. I said, no, Pop. They gave it to me at the club. And he said, nobody gave you $50 for that racket you make. And all I can think is, if you don't believe in me, if you don't believe in me, if you don't believe in me, who will? Ain't no doctor can heal this pain. Only your sunshine can stop this rain. If you don't believe in me, who will? If my trial was held today, who would take my side? Without your everlasting love, how would I survive? You never let me down. I need you to never let me down. If you don't believe in me, who will? If my trial was held today, who would take my side? Without your everlasting love, how would I survive? If you don't believe in me, if you don't believe in me, if you don't believe in me, who will? If you don't believe in me, who will? Hey, funny thing about that club, the 19th Hole, a few years ago, I'm reading a book by Joseph Bonanno, who was the head of the Bonanno crime family in the 50s. And in the book, he talks about a club he owned called the 19th Hole. And in the book, he says he would hire, in quotes, the crummiest, loudest rock band he could find so the FBI couldn't bug him. They told me I was great. If they told me the truth, today it would be Dr. Gross. You couldn't get in to see me for 6 months. Well, we may have been the crummiest, loudest rock band in all of Brooklyn, but we rocked. And 1964 was a big year for rock and roll music. The Beatles played the Ed Sullivan Show. And I played the New Jersey Pavilion at the World's Fair in Queens with my first band. We covered all the big hits of the day, songs like the Young Rascals, Good Lovin', Good Lovin', Good Love. The Ventures, Walk Don't Run. And a song by another English band called Jerry and the Pacemakers. Song was called Ferry Cross the Mersey. But over and over again, at all of our shows, to the chagrin of my bandmates, but the delight of the crowd, I sang, so ferry to New Jersey, 'cause this land... Now this was a pivotal moment for me, because it was the first time I ever got a laugh on stage. You see, being a Weisenheimer was always very important to me because my father had a wicked sense of humor. So I was always trying to be funny to get his attention and affection. My father was a real piece of work. He definitely lived in his own tree. He used to take me to the cemetery to visit his father's grave. And as we walked, we'd pass these beautiful limestone mausoleum buildings. My father never failed to point to those buildings and say, "Those guys really know how to live." I remember standing in front of the little house where I grew up. The paint was always peeling from the rafters. The stucco was cracked. Chunks were falling out. The stoop was falling forward. There was usually tape on a glass in a window. And sitting in front of the house was my father's beloved 1954 Chevy Bel Air. And it's 1964. And I remember one day standing with him, and he was surveying his lot. When he put his arm around me and pointed to it and said, "Son, someday all of this will be mine." Now, my mom's father had a corner drugstore where he and my father worked. These guys were the oddest of odd couples. They couldn't have been more opposite if they tried. My father was the ultimate joker and could not get used to my grandfather, who was the ultimate stoic. He was constantly trying to get a rise out of him. Now picture this. One day my father's standing behind the counter in the drugstore, and my grandfather's facing him, and they're talking. My father's looking past my grandfather out the front door of the store. Now when the cop on the beat came by and they made eye contact, my father took a fiendish pleasure in going like this. The cop pulls his gun. He makes my grandfather get down on the floor. He's some kind of crook. My mother hears this commotion, comes running out of the back room shouting, "You're crazy! You're going to get my father killed! I can't take it anymore! I want a divorce!" In the middle of this mayhem, my father looks at me and goes, "Pretty funny, huh?" Now, I worked in this madhouse every day after school, dusting bottles and delivering prescriptions, and the only thing that kept me partially sane was my music. Fortunately, my band was starting to get booked at frat houses and rock and roll clubs all over New York City. And the summer of my 14th year, we played resort hotels in the Catskill Mountains. Now, these places were beautiful, but they all had one thing in common. The accommodations provided for the musicians reminded me of pictures of Calcutta I'd seen in the Encyclopedia Britannica. But to me, it was the Taj Mahal. Well, we were off one night, and the agent who booked us, he comes up to me and he says, "You, kid, you want to see how this is really done? Come see Mr. B's show tonight." Mr. B, Billy Eckstine, the great jazz singer. Well, I get there early, and I'm backstage cutting up as usual, trying to be the center of attraction, when this same agent comes up to me and he says, "You, kid with the big mouth, you think you're so funny? Go out there and be funny for 10 minutes. My comic didn't show up." I said, "No problem." I went out and gave it my best shot. So I'm out there telling every joke I can think of, and to be honest, to say I bombed would be too kind. They didn't know I was on. They were too busy eating. I mean, literally shoveling. I can still see this one little old lady at a front table with lipstick painted in a circle over her face, and a mouthful of food, looking up at me and saying in a heavy European accent, "It's all right. You're a nice boy. You don't have to be funny for us." This was quite possibly the most brutal line ever said to an entertainer in the history of show business. But in that instant, I learned to play the blues. Now, this brings back memories. I say this brings back memories. But I can't remember them. It's the late 60s. I'm playing these folk clubs in Greenwich Village, like the Bitter End, the Night Owl Cafe, Gertie's Folk City. And I'm playing in a group with some guys I knew who were students at Columbia University, where they're members of a glee club called the Kingsmen. And at one of their shows, they did an oldie from the 1950s called Little Darlin' by the Diamonds. Remember? Yeah, 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 yeah. Anyway, the response from the crowd was just tremendous. Well, as fate would have it, the older brother of one of the Kingsmen witnessed this and had a brainstorm. You grease your hair, wear 50s style clothes, put 3 singers up front in gold lame suits, and do a concert of all doo-wop and rock songs. Well, the concert was billed as the first East Coast Grease Festival. And they thought 500-600 kids would show up. But it was a beautiful night. It was an outdoor concert. And a crowd estimated it between 5,000 and 6,000 people showed up. When the band took the stage, pandemonium broke out. Students and professors dancing naked in the fountains. And the debauchery of that night is legendary at Columbia. The following morning, appalled by what he'd seen from the stage, one of the Kingsmen, the preppiest one, quit in disgust. I, of course, joined. And when the dust settled, there were 12 of us left. And together we created a love letter to the 1950s we called Sha-Na-Na. The group brought back memories of a world that looked something like this. No? Something like this? And sounded something like this. Dooby-doo-doo, ba-doo, 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 dooby-doo-doo, ba-doo, ba-doo, ba-doo. You found me out. I'm in love with you, baby, there ain't no doubt. No ifs, ands, or maybes. I tried to keep it secret. There was nothing I could do. You found me out. I'm in love with you. You found me out. I'm in love with you. Well, I was standing in the kitchen, heard it coming through the walls. The floor started shaking and the ceiling about to fall. Yeah, 6 o'clock. Sure can rock. That skinny little girl from down the block, the one that looked like 6 o'clock. Well, there's a tear rolling down off of every note you play. A mama tutti fruity and a daddy gone away. Yeah, 6 o'clock. Sure can rock. That skinny little girl from down the block, the one that looked like 6 o'clock. Well, every neighbor blows a fuse when she bam-a-lam-a-loos. Bolts her door, lets them scream. 6 o'clock is sweet 16. She give it all she got, then she give a little more. Slides up gently, really lets it roll. 6 o'clock, sure can rock. That skinny little girl from down the block, the one that looked like 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, sure can rock. That skinny little girl from down the block, the one that looked like 6 o'clock. Come on out of there. wrong way. Later that week, a bunch of us, and I mean a really large bunch of us, piled into my VW Bug and drove down from Harlem to West 46th Street in Manhattan to Steve Paul's The Scene. This was the hottest, coolest club in New York City. This is the place where all the biggest rock stars in the world hung around and jammed till the wee hours. I waited outside with the motor running while 4 or 5 of the guys went in armed only with the phenomenal review of the Grease Festival from the Columbia Student newspaper. 10, 15 minutes later, they come out shouting, "We got the gig! We got the gig! We got the gig, all right." A couple of nights later, I'm sharing a stage with Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix. Word on the street about us was so strong, it wasn't long before the legendary promoter, Bill Graham, booked us to play the Fillmore East. On the show that first night was Santana in their first New York appearance, Sha Na Na, Three Dog Night, and Canned Heat. A couple of weeks later, Mr. Graham invited us to play at the Fillmore West right here in San Francisco. Backstage, I met Janis Joplin. I was on cloud 9, but all was not well with our world. Everyone was suffering from the pain of the Vietnam War, and we needed a fix, an elixir. And my generation found it on a farm in upstate New York.
To get back to the warning that I've received, you may take it with however many grains of salt you wish, that the brown acid that is circulating around us is not specifically too good.
The Woodstock Festival was billed as 3 days of peace and music. Sha Na Na was the last band booked to play there, and I was actually the youngest person to perform. Joni Mitchell wrote, "By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong," and it's true. There were over 500,000 people at the Woodstock Festival. Over 50 tons of marijuana was inhaled. But there was no crime, and not one reported case of glaucoma. Arlo Guthrie said that famous line in his improbably nasal voice, "The New York State Thruway is closed, man." That might have been easy for him to say. He was already there. We had to get there. Anticipating diabolical delays, we left in the middle of the night Saturday night, and after talking our way through countless roadblocks, finally arrived 9 a.m. at the Holiday Inn in Fernwood, which is where the act stayed, or in our case, waited till it was time to go on. Now, as soon as I walked in the lobby, the first person I saw was Jimi Hendrix holding a quart of Jack Daniels. As soon as he saw me, he got excited. Not like you and me excited. Like Jimmy excited. "You guys playing here? Cool." And he offers me something to drink. Now, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and I've been up all night. But you don't turn down arguably the greatest guitarist of the 20th century when he offers you something to drink. So we pass the bottle back and forth, and fifth, and sixth. And about an hour later, I'm so numb I can barely feel it when a guy taps me on the shoulder and says he wants to take me to the stage. So I say so long to Jimmy, stagger out of the lobby, and as we get outside on the side of the building, I'm surprised to see a military-style helicopter sitting there. Now, in those days, flying was my second favorite thing. Everything else was tied for first. But in the spirits of the day, I got in with a couple of musicians I knew, a few strangers, and the pilot takes us up. And when we're high enough, he tilts the chopper so we can see the 500,000 people down below. Now, it's the most incredible sight I've ever seen. I'd have been amazed except for the fact that the door was wide open and a couple of us almost fell out. How scared was I? The pilot took one look at me, took us straight back down and took us right back where we started. Now, green and staggering, I retreat to the lobby. Jimmy's still sitting there. He motions me to sit down. He sees I'm upset. When I tell him what happened, he busts out laughing. He has no sympathy at all because, as he tells me, he was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne. He said, have a drink. It'll calm you down. So we passed the bottle back and forth again, and about an hour later, I'm beyond delirious when the same guy taps me on the shoulder and says, your car is here. So I say so long to Jimmy and wobble out of the lobby, and there it is, a 1958 Cadillac with a driver. This is more my speed. I'm sprawled out on the back seat, and we're just about to pull away when the door pops open and a guy slides in next to me. He's got a big beard, round orange sunglasses, and he's smiling at me like this. I recognized him immediately. I said, wait a minute, I know you. You're Jerry Grateful, lead Garcia of the Guitarist Dead. Well, he's grinning from ear to ear because he can see I'm blotto from hair to toe. So he offers me something to smoke. Now, I'm already higher than Kilimanjaro, but you don't turn down arguably the greatest druggie of the 20th century when he offers you something to smoke. So he reaches into the pocket of his denim jacket and produces a little bottle from which he rolls a very large joint. He lights it up, we pass it back and forth, and now I'm trucking. Between Jimmy's hooch and Jerry's hemp, I'm hallucinating so intensely the rest of the day is this magnificent washing machine of images. Joe Cocker's blue boots with the white stars on them. A lake full of naked ladies with breasts floating like lifeboats on a sea of love. Stephen Stills trying to get in the backstage area without a pass. The guard was not impressed. And backstage was an orgy with the most beautiful guitars. Toilets overflowed like Roman fountains. Surrounded by the Daily News headline, hippies mired in sea of mud. All this, and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Blood, Sweat and Tears 10 years after and Johnny Winter. Paul Butterfield showed up in the middle of the night unannounced. They put him right on. I loved Paul Butterfield. I was a huge Paul Butterfield fan. But by 5 o'clock in the morning, we were starting to wonder if they were going to get to us. 7 o'clock in the morning, Sha Na took the stage. We were stoned and sleepless, but greased and ready to kick butt. And we kicked butt and took names. Half an hour later, as we left the stage, I knew we'd arrived. Then, basking in the bliss of success, I watched Hendrix blow the crowd away with the Star-Spangled Banner. Floating there, the strangest thought crossed my mind. He's making music only he can make. I need to make music only I can make. I'm leaving the band. And a couple of months later, I did. See, my father always wanted me to be a doctor. So when I told him we were starting Sha Na Na, he says to me, "You're throwing your life away." Now, just when the band's starting to become internationally famous, I announce I'm leaving to start a solo career. He says to me, "You're throwing your life away." But I had a plan. I'd write some songs, get a record deal, have a hit record, and become a rock star. Naivete is a powerful force in the hands of youth. Hope springs eternal, ignorance is bliss, and what you don't know can't hurt you. Bottom line, the odds against my success never even occurred to me. And what if they did? There wasn't a thing in the world I could have done about it anyway. Sometimes my heart is the captain and blindly I follow wherever it goes. Desire is all that can hold my attention. I'm tumbling out of control. A rolling stone born to wander. Sounds so blue, feels so right. I couldn't change one thing I'm doing. Not if this world should end tonight. Should end tonight. Sometimes it seems like this road's going nowhere, and I'm just along for the ride, spinning my wheels without any direction. Nobody here by my side. To everyone I am a stranger. To myself a mystery. I am aware there is a danger that I'll be rolling endlessly, endlessly. Gone it alone is a lonely decision, but I'm a believer. It's like a religion to me. Oh, a rolling stone born to wander. Sounds so blue, feels so right. I couldn't change one thing I'm doing. Not if this world should end tonight. Should end tonight. Oh. Well, the first thing I needed to do was write some songs. I spent the next year pounding my guitar and playing any dingy dive that would have me. And when I thought I was ready, I called the only guy I knew in show business I thought could help me. Neil Bogart, the president of Buddha Records, the label Sha Na Na recorded for. I played him my songs in his office and he loved them. He told me to have my agent give him a call. They'd work out a deal. I walked out of his office singing, "It's a beautiful morning." The only problem was I didn't have an agent. So I called Sha Na Na's agent at William Morris, a guy who did absolutely nothing to help me the previous year when I was writing. I kept calling and calling, and he offered no help at all. Well, I finally got him on the phone. And when I told him what was going on, he got really excited and told me to come right over to his office. And while I'm there, he calls Neil Bogart on my behalf. And the conversation goes exactly like this. "Neil, how are you?" "Terrific." "She's fine, thanks for asking." I'm calling about Henry Gross. We do represent him. We love him. His music is so much better than it sounds. Yes. Yeah, that's great. That sounds great. No. No, Neil. We can't do that. Neil, forget it. Henry will never take that deal. Neil, Henry will never take that deal. Forget it. Forget it. You too, babe. For the first time in my life, I was speechless. On the way home, I considered killing him, but wrote this instead. Lord, do you feel me when I'm tossing late at night? There are things I'd like to say, but I never know if the time is right. I've been waiting for a moment's rest, so long overdue. I believe it's time we had a talk, just me and you. I know you've got a plan with an excellent design, and God knows I know you know it's been working out just fine. And I don't mean to criticize or in any way malign something so beautiful and certainly divine, but I'd like to renegotiate the deal I have with you. There must be something easier you could have me do. I've been searching for a loophole, but the contract is airtight, and I am laid so very low I cannot sleep at night. So I'd like to renegotiate the deal I have in life. Renegotiate. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Meanwhile, back in real life, I auditioned for a guy who thinks I've got one hit song, but about 1 million great jokes. So he signs me to ABC Dunhill Records in Los Angeles. But the joke was on me. I'm in the studio on the first day of recording, and I do a take, and I ask my producer what he thinks. I said, Steve, how was that? Steve, how was that? Steve? 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 Steve! The silence is deafening, till the engineer finally says into the talkback, Steve, he's gone to play softball. And I'm thinking, no more calls, please. We have a winner. Well, about 6 months later, the record finally came out. I wouldn't say it was released. I'd say it escaped. It did not go gold. It went lead. And not long after, a couple of months, the deal came to a rather unceremonious end when the sales department realized my record was selling like hotcakes. 3 for $1. But every cloud has a silver lining. I was up late one night, in fact all night, listening to WNEW-FM, New York's premier rock and roll station in the 70s, when at 6 o'clock in the morning, the disc jockey Dennis Elsis played Morning Star, a track from my album. And it was the first time I ever heard a song of mine on the radio. It was the most incredible experience, absolutely indescribable. And a light went on. The impossible takes a little bit longer. Well, persistence paid off this time. All I needed was one believer, but I found two. Terry Cashman and Tommy West, the guys who produced Jim Croce's records. With their help, I was signed almost immediately to A&M Records and found myself touring with some of the biggest acts in the world. Aerosmith, the Allman Brothers, the Byrds, Billy Joel, the Doobie Brothers, Fleetwood Mac, and the Kinks, to name too many. So I'm crisscrossing the country with musicians and roadies. But as the opening act, you get paid next to nothing. And let me tell you, the road is tough when you're traveling last class, crushed into compact rental cars, driving all night through the rain and fog, trying to find a place with vacancies on a Saturday night because your road manager screwed up the reservations again. You wind up at the No-Tell Motel, sharing a room with a bass player who just swallowed 714 Quaaludes and a roadie named Bear who smells like he hasn't had a bath since a midwife gave him one. It's not a night for love, but we were in it for love. Certainly weren't in it for money. I remember one night I was at a party after a show, and I overheard, it was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and I overheard someone ask my drummer, Juan Perez, from Havana, Cuba, what it was like working with me. And without missing a beat, Juan said, "The Herren Grosha is a pleasure, is a piece of cake, is the easiest gig in the world." He says, you get together, you rehearse maybe 5-6 months, you learn 300-400 songs, 50-60 chord changes each song, you get in a car, you drive 2-3 days, 2,000-3,000 miles, you get to the club, you unload the gear. You take it up 20-30 flights of stairs, you set it up. With this man, you never do more than 8-10 shows a night, never. 4 o'clock in the morning, you stop. He says, you tear down a gear, pack it up, take it down 20-30 flights of stairs, stuff it in the car, drive 2-3 days, 2,000-3,000 miles. You get home, bang, you got $100. But I'd have paid $1 million to be right where I was, opening shows for one of my all-time favorite bands, the Beach Boys. I may not always love you, but long as there are. I became good friends with Carl Wilson, the lead singer on God Only Knows. Darlin', Good Vibrations. He was a wonderful singer and a wonderful man. I was in LA doing a TV show, and he invited me to lunch at his house in Beverly Hills. Absolutely beautiful place. And he had this fabulous spread laid out. But I'll never know what it tasted like because before we could get a bite, his 2 giant husky dogs jumped up, knocked everything off the table, and woofed it down. He was so nice, he couldn't stop apologizing. I said, Carl, don't worry about it. I have a crazy Irish setter at home called Shannon. And I've seen this very performance many times. Now, as soon as I said that, he got really quiet, and he said that he had a dog named Shannon that he loved very much that was hit by a car and killed only a month before. So when I got back to New York, I was in my apartment sitting on the bed with my Shannon, and I was thinking about Carl when I drifted off and wrote what would become the biggest hit I ever had. Another day is at end. Mama says she's tired again. No one can even begin to tell her. I hardly know what to say, but maybe it's better that way. If Papa were here, I'm sure he'd tell her. Shannon is gone, I know. She's
just like the one in our backyard. Mama tries hard to pretend things will get better again. Somehow she's keeping it all inside her. But finally the tears fill our eyes, and I know that somewhere tonight she knows how much we really miss her. Shannon is gone, oh, she's drifting out to sea. She always loved to swim away. Maybe she'll find another with a shady dream, just like the one in our backyard. Just like the one in our backyard.
It's a multi-channel mixer.
Says so.
Report preliminary findings. Thor reporting.
I'm taking my pill, sir.
42 saturation degrees and 96 volumes.
A beer on the wall.
Immediate fluctuation in Marfan content.
Derek reporting.
Hi, Derek.
Components ratio exceeding 7 to 1.4.
Moore reporting. Diagonal adjustment reading resisting structural forms by 2.8.0 Vernums.
Saw reporting.
Doggone.
Cartloid levels intersect planes
Plays
below
dead well.
.03.
Shannon is gone, they say she drifted out to...
Your life changes when you have a hit, you know. Suddenly, everything you were chasing is chasing you. Billboards half a block long with my face plastered all over them illuminated the Sunset Strip. At the trendiest clubs and restaurants, the velvet ropes parted before me like the Dead Sea as I floated past the civilian flesh and blood to table number 1, with those to be seen are seen. Life was beautiful. I fell in love with me. If I'd written myself a theme song, I'd have called it I Love Me Just the Way I Am, or I Am So Beautiful to Me. It was like a dream come true. Suddenly everything was free. Guitars, amps, backstage, sometimes even love was free. I love free, and it's a good thing. Because all that money I thought I'd make from having a hit record somehow never really appeared. But like I always say, when you do what you love, you got to love what you get. My father, however, did not share this philosophy. Whenever I talked to him after a show, he always asked me the same question. He said, "Did you get the money?" I'd say, "Pop, you're always asking me about the money. Ask me about the music. It's not the money, it's the music." And he said to me, "You're right, son. It's not the money. It's the money." You tell me not to worry. You tell me I should wait. You say that we can work it out, it's just a piece of cake. You're driving a Ferrari, I'm trying to beg a ride. You live the life of rally while I struggle to survive. It's not the principle of the thing. It's not how bad you hurt me when you're pulling on my strings. It's not the way you insult me when you don't return my call. Ain't your condescending attitude. Believe me, most of all, it's not the money. It's the money. Nobody wants to know you, one look was all it took. Next day you win the lottery, your phone rings off the hook. Strangers want to love you, everybody is your friend. You tell a tired old joke and the laughter never ends. All your sins are forgiven, you're a hero and a saint. Everybody says you've changed even though you know you ain't. When you hear them sucking up, it's enough to make you sick. You're the chairman of the board and you didn't work a lick. It's not the money. It's the money. It's crowded at your table when you're paying for the meal. Everybody trying to sell you on some crazy kind of deal. They'll borrow till tomorrow and they'll never pay you back. They'll wish you all the best and pray you have a heart attack because it's the money. Now there's a method to the madness, you better get it right. Gather up your rubles, do your best to hold on tight. Ain't nobody gonna save you when the axe begins to fall. You can bet the farm and all your charm, no one will even call. You're a rich man, baby, long as you have got your health. And true love is without a doubt the greatest form of wealth. Cause all men are brothers treated equal by the law. So allow me to repeat myself much louder than before. It's not the money. It's the money. It's not the money, it's the money, it's the money. Well, unbeknownst to my father, what I lost in money, I made up for in food. At every meal, friends, casual acquaintances, even total strangers would dive for the check. Everything was complimentary. In fact, if I'd written my autobiography in 1976, I'd have called it Mein Kampf. But what I didn't know was the book I should have been writing was From Here to Obscurity. The single after Shannon was called Springtime Mama, and it sold nearly 1 million copies, but compared to the phenomenal success of Shannon worldwide, it felt like a stiff. Subsequent singles sold fewer and fewer copies till the limelight kept fading and fading, and I started to feel like the star of America's Least Wanted. Promoters were advertising my gigs with a guarantee. The Henry Gross Show, always plenty of good parking. And it all happened so fast. I was writing new songs. They were great, but nobody cared. Suddenly, I was a one-hit wonder. And I never understood the negative connotation people attach to one-hit wonders. They talk about it like it's a tragedy. He's a one-hit wonder. To me, it's a blessing. You got to be pretty lucky to have a hit. So I'm a one-hit wonder, wondering where to wander next to have another hit when it hits me. Nashville, Tennessee, songwriting capital of the world, might be a good place to go to try and reinvent myself. I could even change my name to Owen Money. So I moved there in 1986. But what really got me to Nashville were those old country songs I heard when I was a kid on the radio. I loved to hear Hank Williams when he sang, "Hey, good looking, have you got cooking?" And I like Johnny Cash on Sun Records when he sang, "Get rhythm when you get the blues, get rhythm when you get the blues." And Buck Owens on that Hee Haw show when he said, "They're gonna put me in the movies, and all I gotta do is act naturally." So I thought if I took the best elements of all that country music I loved and rolled it up into one song, I'd have a surefire country hit and a new career. So I wrote, "She's walking down by the railroad tracks, dressed to kill like a heart attack. On her way to the midnight owl, a pack of wolves is on the prowl. She knocks 'em dead like I knew she would. A little redneck Riding Hood." Can you believe it? It was not a hit. So I'm thinking, I got to get a hit. What am I going to do? I got to get a hit. What am I going to do? I got to get a hit. What am I going to do? I got to get a hit. I can't quit show business. I still had some 8x10s. I got to get a hit. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I got to get a hit. What am I going to do? I got to get a hit. What am I going to do? I got to get a hit. When it hit me, I need a hit record, but I'm on the case. Laying in bed with a smile on my face, resting my fingers, saving my voice, 'cause paying my dues is not my first choice. I got a method that's worked in the past. Some say it's crazy, depends who you ask. I've never been one for beating down doors. There's an easier way to win a Grammy Award. I'm sleeping my way to the top, nodding off and napping a lot. In my dreams, I'm the cream of the crop. The radio playing my songs non-stop. Rolling Stone calling me the king of pop. I'm sleeping my way to the top. Sleeping my way to the top. I tried everything I could think of to have another hit, and nothing worked. That's when the sky fell in on me, literally. A leaky roof brought down the ceiling in my bedroom and woke me from a deep sleep. I had to get up in the middle of the afternoon and pull everything out of my closet. That's when I found my box, started looking through it, and I realized, you want hits? Look in your box. It's all in the box. Those memories are your number ones. Like playing for Gil Hodges on that stoop in Brooklyn. I remember my mom calling WNEW-FM over and over requesting my songs. One day she calls me up, she says, "Son, I think I made trouble for you with Dennis Elsas, the disc jockey who played my songs most often." I said, "Ma, what did you do now?" She said, "He hadn't played a song of yours all day, so I called again to request one." And he asked, "Is this Mrs. Gross?" And I said, "Not necessarily." I wonder if Mrs. Jagger ever did that. I remember my dad working incredibly long hours in that drugstore. So he never really had time for me. I mean, when he did manage to get a day off every blue moon, They were always friends or family around, so I never really got to spend a day alone with them the whole time I was growing up. Except for one day I'll never forget. July 14th, 1957. He actually left the drugstore and took me to Ebbets Field to see the Brooklyn Dodgers play. It was the greatest day of my youth, one of the most important days of my life, and I remember every detail like it was yesterday. The stands, the scoreboard, the color of the grass, the smell of the hot dogs and beer. I was 6 years old. It was just me and my father. He got me a ball autographed by the entire Brooklyn Dodger team. And the Dodgers beat the Milwaukee Braves that day 3-2 on a home run in the bottom of the ninth by Gil Hodges. So many times over the years I wanted to tell my father how much that day meant to me. But he wasn't the kind of guy you could say that to. I knew he loved me. But if I'd said to him, hey, Pop, remember that day in 1957 you took me out to the ball game, just me and you? He'd have thought I was going soft in the head, cracking up. You just couldn't go there with him. He wasn't that kind of guy. Well, he died in 1986. He had a heart condition, and I guess he knew he didn't have long because he left an envelope for me where he knew I'd find it. Now, I was out of town when he passed. And when I got home, I found the envelope. And inside were the ticket stubs for that game. Proving, beyond the shadow of a doubt, the impossible takes a little bit longer. I've been tossing and turning all night, rolling and tumbling all of my life. Through the darkness I see patches of light, so I know I'll get home all right. I've been wandering, wasting my time, running red lights, looking for signs, just a rambling, paying no mind, crossing every borderline. Must be angels by my side, standing guard, acting as guides every time I'm lost and weary-eyed. Must be angels by my side. I've been known to go too far, driving way too fast, living way too hard. Guess my going for broke is in the cards, so I'm thanking my lucky stars. Must be angels by my side, standing guard, acting as guides every time I'm lost and weary-eyed. Must be angels by my side. I've been good, for goodness sake. I've been bad, low down, a poisonous snake. I've had love, sweet love, make my whole world shake. I've had tears nearly drown me in heartache. I've been tossing, turning all night, rolling and tumbling all of my life. Through the dark light, so I know I'll get home all right. Must be angels by my side, standing guard, acting as guides every time I'm lost and weary-eyed. Must be angels by my side. Must be angels by my side. Well, it's always hard to open my box in front of a room full of strangers. But every time I do, it feels so great because it keeps me sane. Everyone tells me I'm crazy to try and start over in show business at this age, and they have a point. But you got to listen to your heart when it tells you there's a difference between having an open mind and a hole in the head. It's about perseverance, reinvention, and the belief that tomorrow will be better than today. If that's having a hole in the head, I say the breeze is delightful. So I still write songs nearly every day, and I still make CDs. Only now I sell them on my website and out in the lobby after the show, something I've been dying to tell you all night. Well, these days, every day is a blessing. I have an amazing, wonderful wife, Marilyn. We've been together for 30 years. This is our wedding picture. And when I count my blessings, I count her twice. We have two beautiful girls. We call our dogters. And 6 pushy cats we lovingly refer to as the literati. So for 40 years, I'm asking myself, whatever happened to me? Where am I now? Where am I now? I'm right here with you, doing what I love. I'll take it. The waitress asks me if I'm famous. I say no, but I'm hungry. She says the eggs are cold, the toast is burnt, the bacon's mostly fat, and I say, lucky me, I like it like that. Nowhere to stay, I ring a doorbell. The landlord looks me up and down and says, the walls are thin, the rooms are cramped, there's no place to hang your hat. And I say, lucky me, I like it like that. 'Cause every day I play it straight, never tempt the hand of fate. In a world of give and take, I take what's given. I find a gypsy fortune teller in a rundown shack across the tracks. She says, money isn't in the cards, hard work will break your back. And I say, lucky me, I like it like that. 'Cause every day I play it straight, never tempt the hand of fate. In a world of give and take, I take what's given. Standing at the gates of heaven, St. Peter smiles at me and says, the food is great, the hotel's grand, your bags have been unpacked. And I say, lucky me, I like it like that. Lucky me, I like it like that. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. About 3 months after my father took me to that baseball game, the unthinkable happened. The Dodgers left Brooklyn for LA, and I got a valuable life lesson. Nothing is forever. You got to make every moment count. And that's what you did for me tonight. You're a wonderful audience. I want to thank you. You made every moment count. And I really, people say this, but I sincerely want to thank you. You gave me the greatest gift anyone can ever give anyone, especially an artist. Your time. Lucky me. Thank you.